Good morning. All right. All right. What we're going to do today is we're going to pick up on some of the concepts that we touched on yesterday, and we're going to help you use the metrics that we talked about and really apply them in some real-world sales environments. I know this is typically the favorite part of the training for most salespeople and admins and such, because none of this is really theory-based. This is all real-world stuff that will hopefully give you guys the ability to take this information and actually use it and implement it at your desk. I always call it tools for your toolbox. Okay, selling is like any other profession, right? You have to have skills, you have to have tools. Okay, so what I want you to be able to walk away with from today is with some tools that are going to help you be more productive, help generate more money for the company, and help make more money for yourself. Okay? First couple things that we need to talk about is, again, we talked about how there's the science of selling and there's the art of selling. Today is all about the artistic side of it, if you will, that whole connecting with people, developing relationships, overcoming objections, all that kind of stuff. The science stuff that we talked about yesterday was, again, the metrics, the measurements, how do we make sure we're doing the things that we should be doing? And when you commingle the two, that's when you have the best of both worlds. That's when you have, something that's really going to drive you to the success that you're hopefully really capable of. What I really want you to walk away from today is with a couple of abilities, and that is, one, to shorten the length of time it takes you to get to a decision maker. All right, so when you pick up the phone and say, "Hi, my name is," from PLI, from that point to when you actually get to a decision maker, I want to try and shorten that gap for you. What I find is really interesting is a lot of people struggle with that, and they're talking to people, they're making call after call after call into a particular account, and they're talking to layers of people sometimes, thinking maybe they're talking to the decision maker when they're actually not. And that can be a waste of your time as well as their time, because it's not ever going to really get you to the sale that you're looking for. It might get you little bits and pieces of business, but the other thing we're going to also talk about is how do you make sure you're talking to everyone that you need to be talking to at a particular account. There's typically more than one person involved in a decision. Sometimes not. Sometimes some of the smaller properties, we have it a lot in Nashville where it's a small mom and pop restaurant. It's the guy that owns the restaurant. He's the decision maker. There are times, though, when there's departmental people, right, where you've got somebody, this guy's making the key card decision, this one's making the restaurant decision, this one's making the back of house, So making sure that you're talking to all the right people is really, really important. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I really want to improve the quality of your calls, specifically your cold calls, because we all know how much salespeople love cold calls. Okay, it is something that you must always be doing, and we'll talk about that, and that goes back to the metrics that we were talking about yesterday. What we're going to talk more about is developing that pipeline, right? We talked about the sales funnel yesterday, where that whole 10-3-1. What we're going to talk about today is how does that relate to developing a pipeline of new customers, okay? And we'll define that for you. But what I really want to do is improve those cold calls, because that's going to be the beginning of the rest of that entire relationship. And if you do it right, again, it really shortens the gap from "Hi, my name is" to an actual sale. Even in events in some of these departments where it is a long sales cycle just by nature, hopefully we can help you even still shorten that a little bit more, all right? For those of you calling on just the hotels to sell them key cards or some of the other products, or you're calling on restaurants to sell them gift cards or loyalty cards, the sales cycle is actually quite short. And that's actually what's kind of exciting about it. You can go from "Hi, my name is" to a sale sometimes in one conversation, maybe two, maybe three, but that cycle is actually quite short. What that means is that you've really got to make a good, lasting, first impression. And that stands for no matter how long the sales cycle might be. I want to help you with some real ideas and ways to help you stand out from the crowd. Remember in the last section we talked about the Monkey 32 concept and kind of differentiating yourself and getting you to stand out? Did we talk about that? Okay, no? All right. I had an old sales manager of mine, and he coined this term, and I actually thought it was quite cool, where he would tell salespeople, say, look, these guys, you're not the only sales call that person's receiving in any given day. They're getting anywhere, and this is statistically true, anywhere from 20 to 30 solicitations a day. So think about it now. You're the other person on the end of the phone. You're inundated as a business person with, "Hey, I want to sell you something. Hey, I want to sell you something." One, we already established in the last section, people love to buy but hate to be sold. So 20 people a day calling you saying, "I want to sell you something," not going to be really well received, is it? So how do you stand out and how do you differentiate yourself? How do you not be that he called it monkey, that 30-second monkey on the phone saying the same darn things as everybody else? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. The other thing we'll really spend some time on is helping you overcome specific objections, because the reality is this: they come in different forms, but at the heart of it, there are only about 8 to 10 actual objections. They're very common. They repeat over and over and over again. People just put their own little spin on them in terms of what they say and how they say it. But remember in the last section how we were talking about the "I'm just looking"? Well, the "I'm just looking" is the equivalent to 5 other objections that you might actually hear on the phone. I'm happy with my current supplier, we're not making any changes right now, business is down. All these objections are common, similar objections that when you really boil it all down, it boils down to maybe 10 actual objections. Yet you'll hear it 100 different ways. All right, so we'll talk about that and give you some real tools to deal with that. Before we dive into any of that, the thing that I need you to understand first and foremost is something called the triple transaction. Okay. The triple transaction simply states the following. In order to be a successful salesperson, you need to sell yourself, sell your company, and sell your product or service last. Here is the problem. Statistically, nearly every one of you in this room currently sells the complete opposite way. You sell your product and service first. You then back it up by saying what a great company PLI is, 20 plus years in business, great customer service, we do this, we do that. And then, oh, by the way, I'm a pretty nice person, you should buy from me. If you even get to that, which a lot of people don't. Statistically and just in terms of real practice, it has been proven that this is the most effective way to sell yourself, your company, and your product and service. The way most of you are selling right now is completely counterintuitive to that when you're selling in the reverse order. And a conversation might go something like this. Hi, this is so-and-so from PLI. I want to let you know that we have a great deal this month on key cards, and we do this and we do that. And if you're not interested in key cards, I got this product. And if you're not interested in that product, I got this product. Right? You do the whole product switch up thing depending on what they might be interested in. We've been in business for over 20 years. We keep X amount of inventory. We got great customer service. We stand behind everything we sell. Right? Sounding familiar? Okay, you guys are selling the completely wrong way. We already established when we talked in the science of selling that people buy from people they like. Okay? If you start selling from here up, from product to yourself, you're taking longer to get to like because you're not doing anything to sell yourself. All you're doing is sounding like Monkey 32, saying all the same things that every other company that called that day said. Do you think for 1 second that you're the only company selling key cards calling that hotel? No. We wish that were the case, right? That'd make life a little bit easier, but it's not. Okay, those other companies selling key cards, don't you think they're saying they're the biggest, they're the best? Have you ever watched TV and you watch car commercials? You know what's really funny? Every car company is the #1 company. How is that possible? Right? #1 car in America. #1. You can watch a Honda commercial, Toyota, back to back to back to back, and they're all #1. How is that possible? Okay, in sales, there are companies that they don't lie, but they'll take some liberties. Yeah, they're #1 in one segment 2 years ago, and there's a little tiny disclaimer at the bottom, but they get on TV and say they're #1 at something. A lot of companies do that. Some companies are way less scrupulous than we are, and they'll just flat out lie. Okay, and they'll say, oh yeah, we're the biggest at this, and we're the best at that. How, as a consumer, as a potential customer, do you cut through that noise? How do you know what's fact and what's fiction, right? And if you're all saying the same things, they have to start making a value judgment based on what? Do I like this person, and do I trust this person? Okay? When you are selling and focusing so much on selling your product and your company and not enough time on selling yourself, I'm not saying you'll never get there. Obviously, you guys have closed sales. What I'm saying is it might take you longer to get there than it has to be. Does that make sense? So what I want to help you do is shorten that whole gap of time, again, as I said earlier, from hi, my name is, to getting an actual sale. If you follow the principles of the triple transaction, that's exactly what will happen. Okay, so again, this will help you see a much greater degree of success with prospects and with leads and with customers, okay? Any questions on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Show us an example how you thought somebody would sell yourself first.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, no, we're going to do that. We're going to do it all. Yes.
I would like to know, just out of curiosity, and it's my opinion, that we say, some people get on the phone and say we're the largest manufacturer of key cards in the world. In my opinion, I shut down right there after that first sentence, and I don't believe a word that you say afterwards. I think that's a ridiculous statement. Are we really the number one largest key manufacturer in the world?
Yeah.
Have we gone to India? Have we gone to China? Have we checked this out? I mean, that's a pretty, even if it's true, it's a very bold, audacious statement to say.
But it happens to be a true statement. I mean, we
I
control.
don't think that people believe it.
Well, but then you have to qualify it and you have to quantify it, and we're going to talk about that. You can't make an empty statement and not be able to back it up. That's always a dangerous thing. But to your point, if you haven't established like and trust, and you start what I call popping off with those kinds of statements like we're the biggest, we're the best, you're doing exactly what I'm telling you not to do. Because you're right, they don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't know whether they can believe you or not, they don't know if you're just like every other person that's called them today saying those things. But if you establish like and trust first, when you make a statement like that, it's going to be a lot more credible. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
That's
And
the whole
what I
point.
was saying, that first sentence when we say, hi, I'm Ian from PLI, we're the largest key manufacturer. If I was a customer, I would shut down right there and not believe anything else
Okay.
that came out of my mouth.
Well, what I'm telling you is that better not be your first sentence. That should not be your first sentence.
It is in
Not when you
PLI.
leave this room, it won't be.
Well, I'm not saying anything, I'm saying I hear it all the
I know,
time.
but that's why we're doing this training. When you leave this room, that is not your first sentence. Okay, we're going to give you new sentences to be your first sentence. Okay.
I never made it my first sentence.
Okay. Good. Then you have nothing to worry about. Okay. A couple things that I want to define for us before we go any further. Everyone's okay on the triple transaction?
Yes.
Conceptually? Okay. Because we'll talk more about it in actual application, and I will absolutely answer your questions as far as real examples of what we're talking about. Okay. The next thing we need to talk about is let's define who we are talking to, okay, and what these people represent. I start breaking people down and define people as leads, prospects, customers, and that's where a lot of people stop. I go one step further and I talk about clients. All right, now here's the difference between a lead, a prospect, a customer, and a client. A lead is a name on a piece of paper. It's a Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of names and phone numbers on it. It's been maybe qualified enough to go, okay, yes, it is a hotel. Yes, they have rooms. Yes, they probably need key cards. But that's probably the extent of how well qualified that lead is. Obviously, some more work is required with that company or with that individual to say, okay, is there real potential here? Can we do business with them? What is the situation? A prospect, they become a prospect once a salesperson has actually gotten on the phone with them, qualified them, and identified, yes, there is real potential here. This is someone we want to do business with. A customer is someone who has purchased from us. Okay, that makes sense, right? The client level is a space that as salespeople you always want to get your relationships to, but very few do. A client is someone who buys from you often, regularly, repeatedly, comes back time after time. You're their guy, you're their gal. That's a client. Developing people from lead to prospect to customer to clients is referred to as your pipeline. Where a lot of salespeople struggle is when they first start at a new company or in a new sales job, they're forced, because they have no other choice, to do what? Develop a pipeline, right? Because they get hey, hi, welcome to PLI, here's a lead of a bunch of hotels, call these, right? There's your first start, there's your leads. You're making a bunch of cold calls, trying to convert people from leads to prospects to customers. You get a bunch of customers, you start booking some business, you start doing your number every month. What do you stop doing? Building a pipeline. You stop cold calling new leads, you stop developing new prospects, therefore you stop developing new customers. Some of you don't even do enough to turn your customers into clients. You abandon or you orphan your customers. You took an order from them 7 months ago and you haven't talked to them since. You know, and you know, I do these trainings and some people shake their head, oh, I would never do that. But it's funny, I go look in the Hagen notes and that's exactly what I see. Last contact 6 months ago, last contact 7 months ago, last contact 4 months ago. You cannot turn customers into clients when you're speaking to them that irregularly. Even if it's an event that only happens once every 6 months. If you allow that much gap of time to happen between your contact with that person, you are leaving the door wide open for what?
Monthly 32.
Poachers. Okay, people that are going to come right in there and poach that event and that client right away from you. Relationships take work, right? Anybody in a personal relationship? Nothing easy about them. They take work. Well, so do business relationships. They require nurturing, they require time, they require attention, they require contact. Okay? So if you want to turn customers, somebody who bought from you once, into somebody who's going to buy from you a second, third, fifth, 10th, 20th time, you got to work at it. You never, ever, ever, ever stop developing your pipeline. Some of you will successfully do it. Some of you have the ability, you'll scramble and you'll recover. But as I said in the first section, why make life any harder on yourself than you have to? Sales can be hard enough. Life can be hard enough. Why make it harder on yourself? If you're always developing and building a pipeline, you will always be fed. Always. And you will not be on the roller coaster ride that is sales for a lot of salespeople. You know, 60,000 one month, 20,000 the next, 60 the next, 20, 60, right? And then think about the poor management that has to try and forecast and model against that. You know, is this salesperson a 20,000 person or a 60,000 person? Which one are they? Are they just getting lucky in those 60,000 months with a couple of big deals that are carrying them over? You follow what I'm saying? Okay, so if you want to be a consistent salesperson, and I can speak on behalf of all of management, consistency is king. We love consistent salespeople, someone that every single month is going to deliver a certain number. We can bank on it. We can set our watches to it. Okay? Because those are the people who do have the even bigger and better months because they do occasionally get lucky. And again, we talked about luck as where opportunity and hard work meet. Nothing wrong with luck. That's not a bad term. But be in the right place at the right time by always developing your pipeline. And start thinking in this context. When we talked yesterday about 10-3-1, in many respects that applies here in terms of pipeline generation. If you 10 leads is going to translate into probably only 3 actual prospects. Not every lead is viable. Not every lead, like we brought up in the last section, you know, there's a hotel who, you know, it's a Days Inn, they have like, 50 rooms, they've got, no restaurant on property. There's very limited potential there. So I'm not saying we might not do business with them, but is that someone as a salesperson you're going to spend every single day talking to? I would hope not. Okay, and then there's some leads that just don't pan out. Okay, there are a lot of hotels, believe it or not, it's like a lot of bed and breakfasts that what? They don't even have electronic lock systems. They're still using metal keys. Is that a viable lead right now? No. They don't use electronic key cards. Now, they're a viable lead maybe for some other products. Maybe they want channel guides. Maybe they want door hangers. Maybe they want this. Maybe they want that. So you can turn them into a viable lead, but at least as far as key cards are concerned, maybe they're not. Not every lead is going to become a prospect. Not every prospect is obviously going to become a customer. Okay, this is still all about closing ratios, right? You talk to a bunch of prospects, only about 30% of those, 3 out of 10, is going to turn into an actual customer. Out of those customers, how many of them are actually going to be converted into clients? Again, that ratio of 30% stays pretty constant. So think about that. If you started off with 100 leads, only 30 of them are going to become prospects. Oops, 300, wishful thinking on my part. Okay, 10 are going to become customers, right? How many of those 10 are going to become clients? Maybe 3. You guys see how the 10-3-1 still applies? So people were asking yesterday, well, how does this apply to me beyond just, my calls and my ratios and all that? Here's how it also applies. When you look at developing your pipeline, this is what you're really dealing with. If you start with 100 leads, which is a pretty common number, a lot of sales managers will say, hey, look, here's 100 leads, get started with this. Okay, 100 of those are going to convert into 30 viable prospects. 10 of them are going to become customers. 3 of them may be clients. If you stop there with only 10 customers and 3 clients, are you going to ever be able to sustain your number? No way. You've got to constantly be developing that pipeline. I love it when salespeople come to me and say, look, I've really worked through all these leads. I've developed a lot of these leads. I've got a bunch of customers. I need more. That's a good thing. Now, I'll challenge that statement and say, are you sure you really need more? Have you really called all these guys? Have you qualified them completely? Have you really gotten in, and are you talking to every single person you can? Because here's the reality. As I said earlier, out of those 10 customers, how many actual people are at each of those customers that you should be talking to? Everybody with me? So if you've got 10 customers and they have an average of 3 purchasing related people there, you're not talking to 10 people, you're talking to 30 people, right? And you shouldn't only be talking to 10 customers, you should be talking to how many, do you think? What do you think is a good number? Huh? Well, I like 100, but that's a lot, okay? You should be talking to an average salesperson should be able to very successfully, very capably, and very completely manage anywhere from 35 to 50 actual customers, given there's an average of 3 to 5 people related to the purchasing of product at each of those customers. Okay, so you should be able to manage at least, a couple of hundred contacts on a regular basis. And that's made up of existing customers and clients, and then still developing your pipeline by calling on new leads and new prospects. Both of those activities have to be an ongoing thing, and they just can never stop. The most successful salespeople become the least successful salespeople because they stop doing this. I mean, I have seen the top producers become the bottom producers like that. Simply because their guy at their customer went away, hit by a bus, moved, retired, something happened, and now all of a sudden a huge chunk of their business is gone, and now it's panic mode. What am I going to do? I got to figure something out. I got to get, and that's the wrong way to do it. All right, if you're always developing your pipeline, you will always leave yourself in a better place. Any questions on that? No? Okay.
How long do you think from a customer coming to a client, that cycle, to really become a client, wouldn't it be at least a year, to have them buy over from you?
It varies. It depends on the sales cycle. Like for an event, yeah, it might only be an event that happens once a year. But my whole point is you can't have contact at 6 and 12-month intervals with this person. You need to speak with this person regularly. A lot of things change. Their position might change. Their role might change. Maybe they have a new event that comes online that you didn't even know about. There's a lot of things that can happen. How many times have you called somebody back 6 months later, they're not there anymore? Or how many times have you called them back a few months later and their job has changed and now someone new is in that position that you've never talked to? And guess what? They've got their favorite supplier. And now you're behind the 8 ball trying to play catch up going, yeah, well, but we did the event last time. And she's like, yeah, but I got my guy. And I don't even know who you are in the events next week. How likely is it you're going to convert that person on that tight of a timeline where they're going to risk doing business with you? They don't know you. They don't like you. They don't trust you, right? And then, oh, yeah, sure, I'm going to take a leap of faith. Here you go, Brian. I trust you. No, they're not going to trust the success of that event on someone they don't know. That's why it is critical that you are in constant contact with people. In certain spaces, like in the restaurant space, we have customers that come back and order every couple of months. We have people, because the economy is a little tight, they're being a little skittish, so they're ordering a little less quantity, and then they're realizing, oh, wow, I actually got rid of it all, I need more, and they're coming back more frequently. So we're trying to teach those people that's kind of silly because you're actually paying more that way. Don't be afraid, jump in, buy a little bit more up front. It's going to actually save you money in the long run. But you're going to have those people that are just going to play it, safe. But that's okay. But if we're not in constant contact with those people, if we're not regularly, I call it customer touches. You've got to be touching your customers, okay? And there's ways to touch customers. There's email, okay? There's obviously face-to-face contact. There's phone contact. There's snail mail. Believe it or not, people still use regular mail. All right? There's faxes. There's all kinds of ways that you can stay in front of your customers. I encourage all the salespeople in Nashville, and you guys might be doing it here too, to send out things like thank you cards, anniversary cards, birthday cards. Okay? Always stay in front of your customer. Give them an opportunity to remember you, to remember the company, and to always be thinking of you. Customers have very, very short-term memories. They forget you very quick. All the things that you told them and that you think they remembered, they didn't remember. How many times have you called a customer back a couple months later and they mentioned, yeah, you know, we just finished this project. We just did some door hangers for our hotel. They're like, what? Why didn't you call me? I do door hangers. Oh, you do? Has that ever happened to anybody? Something similar? It happens all the time because you did what we talked about yesterday, not to get back ahead of ourselves. You did VD. You hit them with everything we do and more. Okay, and what happens? What did we talk about in terms of the rule of 5? They only remember about 5 things anyway. Not 5 products, 5 things. You hit them with 30 things. And guess what? They're never going to remember the things you wanted them to remember. They're going to remember the things they want to remember. Right? Have you ever had that happen? Like you'll say 2 prices, and what price do they always remember? The lower one. Right? Always. Really? I don't remember you telling me $1. I thought you said 85 cents. They never remember the higher price. People remember what they want to remember. That's why, and we'll get back to this is so dangerous. Okay? All right, some real important tools I want to talk about real quickly because these are going to help you as we progress through the rest of this. First one is inclusion. Everybody went to high school, I'm going to assume. All right? There were cliques and groups and stuff in high school, right? There were the cool kids, there were the jocks, there were the this, there were the that. And you wanted to belong to one of those groups, whichever was your particular interest. Everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to fit in, almost everyone. Some people rebel against fitting in, but that's another group unto itself. Okay? Everyone wants to fit in. Everyone wants to feel included. Inclusion in a sales world is a really powerful thing. Generally speaking, no offense to all of us, I'm a person too, people are sheep. They follow popular trends, they follow pop culture, they follow a lot of different things that kind of start defining who we are and the type of people we are. As a salesperson, you can use that fact to your benefit. Give me some ideas, if you can think of any. How do you already use inclusion? You're doing it already, you just may not know that you're doing it. How do you try to use inclusion today in your current sales pitch or your phone calls? Any ideas?
If I call the Pittsburgh Steelers and I'm trying to pitch them on key cards, I tell them that Tampa Bay's doing it. I'm doing it for the Jets. I do it for so-and-so.
Name dropping is the most powerful and pretty much common form of inclusion. What you're saying is, hey, we're the cool kids. These guys are already with us. Why don't you want to be? Come on, join in, jump in, the water's fine. You're using inclusion by name dropping. Name dropping does a few things. It makes them think. It goes, well, if the Pittsburgh or whoever, if Tampa Bay is doing it with these guys already, maybe we should think about it. It gives you credibility, especially when those names are big and especially if those names are market leaders in their particular space. We call on a lot of independent coffee shops, all right, and we're chasing right now Starbucks, for example, and I have their RFP, and it's ridiculous. It's 200 pages, okay? But let's assume we land Starbucks. Do you not think that gives us instant credibility with every other coffee shop on the planet? And don't you think we're going to name drop the heck out of that? You know, we're just going to call every coffee shop and go, Starbucks. Don't have to say anything else. Okay, and they're like, where do we sign? Okay, there's real power, especially if that company is a market leader. If you're dealing with Major League Baseball teams or Major League Baseball themselves and the NFL, Pizza Hut, Domino's, all of these brand names and market leaders, you have got to name drop the heck out of it. Because one, like I said, it gives you credibility, and two, it's what we're talking about here. People want to belong. It implies, hey, they're already using us, why aren't you? Does that make sense? I mean, again, conceptually, a lot of you were doing it already without even realizing you're doing it, but I want you to do it starting to realize you're doing it and how powerful it actually can be. Okay, the other one, and this is a big word, is acknowledgement. And I'm going to misspell it. Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is by far one of the most powerful tools for overcoming objections that there possibly is. The way you use acknowledgement to deal with an objection is that if you state the objection, you have taken control of the objection. This is a kind of negotiating 101 tip. If you read a book on negotiating, listen to a tape, go to any kind of a seminar on negotiating, they will tell you that if you acknowledge the potential problem or flaw or issue up front, you've put it out on the table and you now have control over it. Versus if somebody just kind of hits you with an objection or blindsides you with it, and now you have to kind of defend against that, it just puts you in a different position, and it puts you in a position of weakness. Everybody with me on that? Okay, so by doing it, you take control, you're on the offensive instead of the defensive, and here's the reality, guys. You can't always anticipate every objection. But as we talked about already at the beginning, there are some common objections that you know are going to come up. All right? I assume, although I tell you typically never to assume anything, but I assume a few things when I go into a conversation. I assume I already have competition there, right? They're already doing business with somebody. All right? The hotel's been in business, they're open, they're buying their key cards from someone, not us. So one of the ways you can use acknowledgement right up front is to say something like, look, I understand, I completely get it that you have an existing relationship with a supplier, and I respect that. However, you see what you've done? You put it right out there. They can't now, 10 minutes into this conversation, go, well, you know what, I already have a supplier and I'm happy. You know, you put it right out there. You've now taken control of the objection. And now you can have a conversation on your terms about, okay, what's it going to take for me to earn your business away from that other supplier? Does that make sense? So instead of just launching into this long-winded sales pitch or the verbal diarrhea, okay, you're going to do a few other things before you do any of that, and then when you actually do get to selling, although I'm not a big fan of that word as we've discussed, you're going to acknowledge a lot of stuff. So again, we're talking about inclusion and acknowledgement, and I want to touch on a couple other things real quick with acknowledgement. Another real important thing to acknowledge right now, and you guys brought this up in the first section, is we all know the current state of the economy, right? So you can either wait for that to be brought up as an objection, or you can bring it up straight away. And I would recommend that you do. And you can do that in several ways, one of which is to say, look, we all understand and we all know what's going on in the economy right now. We all know and we all understand what's happening in hospitality. However, and then we'll talk about that transitional statement you make to say, but here's what you still need to do, and so on and so forth. You know, in our space, when we talk about gift and loyalty cards, for example, a lot of people are making cuts, and they say, look, if I don't have to spend that extra few $100s right now to buy some more cards or to do this or to do that, you know, that saves me a little bit of money. Maybe it's the right thing to do. The problem is that when things are tough, one of the first areas people cut is advertising and marketing, when in reality, it's one of the last things they should cut. Hey, if business is already down, you should be doing everything in your power to do what? Get it up. Okay, so if you're not advertising, if you're not marketing, if you're not participating in trade shows, if you're not doing whatever it is that you need to do within your specific industry to try and grow your business, you're doing more harm than good. The few $100s you're saving by not buying some cards may cost you thousands and thousands down the road. And that has to be a message you need to be able to deliver, and we'll talk about more of that stuff. But what I'm saying is, if you acknowledge, look, I understand things are tight. I understand the market's tough. I understand your occupancy rates are down. Even more reason to take a look at another supplier and how we might be able to help you. You see what I did? So I acknowledge the objection that I know I'm going to get. So I took control over it, and then I gave them a solution to the problem. That's powerful stuff. Instead of, like I said earlier, rambling on with this long-winded sales pitch about how great PLI is and all the products and services we offer, and then get hit with all these objections. Well, I've already got a supplier. Oh, you know, the market's really terrible. We're not really making any changes. We're not making any decisions. You know, unless you can save me like a ton of money, I'm not interested. Right now, all of a sudden, you're in scramble defense mode where you're like, well, yeah, but I can do this. And oh, yeah, but I can do that. All the while, you still haven't established what? The like and the trust that we've talked so much about. So acknowledgement and inclusion, two very, very powerful tools. And as we start talking about some of these real scenarios, you're going to hear me use both of them a lot. All right, and I want to encourage you to use them very, very often. Okay, so we've talked about the triple transaction, right, which is what? Sell yourself, sell your company, and then sell your product and service last. And real quickly on that note again, if you remember from the first section, we talked about, there's all these buyer surveys that are done. And price typically winds up where? Like 4th or 5th on their list of why they made a purchasing decision. Yet you ask the same group of salespeople why they think they didn't get the sale or why they bought, and they'll say price. Price is always number 1 or number 2 on the salesperson's list. Obviously, there's a disconnect somewhere, and I'll tell you who's right. Who's right is the customer. The customer knows why they made their purchasing decision, and you need to understand that. The triple transaction, if you sell the way you're currently selling, by selling the product and service first, what you are in essence doing is you are selling price. Here's the reality. I don't know if any of you read or saw, there was an article in one of our newsletters that I wrote about selling product versus selling a service. Okay? There's a big, big difference. Here's the reality, and the people in Nashville have heard this quite a bit from me. When somebody asks you what you do, your response should not be, I sell key cards. Your response should be, I provide a service to hotels. Something along those lines. Because that in reality is what you're doing. We take the approach when it comes to the gift and loyalty cards where we'll say, we're in the business of helping our customers grow their business by 30% or more. Because statistically that has been proven that that's exactly what happens when you have a gift or loyalty program at your restaurant or at your retail establishment. So instead of leading off with selling a product, we're selling a service of, hey, let us be your consultants. Let us help you. Let us show you how you can grow and improve your business. You're selling events? Let me work with you to show you how we can improve your event. Make that event as successful and as beneficial as possible to the attendees, to the advertisers, to the people. Do you see the difference in the approach? Versus, let me help you get a whole bunch of key cards in a whole bunch of area hotels. That's not the same message. Okay? The triple transaction is important because that's exactly what it talks about. It talks about if you sell yourself, if you sell your company, and then lastly you finally get to talking about the product becomes almost less important. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's exactly what it should be. Is everybody with me on that? Because if you make the product center stage and the only thing that you can sell off of, I can tell you right now that that product is what we call a commodity. Okay, and a commodity by definition is something that can be bought anywhere, a multitude of different places. You can, in essence, get the same product almost anywhere. Cars are a perfect example. Back to our car thing earlier, right? You go Honda, you can go to any one of those dealerships. The product's the same. It's the same car. Why are you going to buy from one dealership over the other dealership? Well, it might be convenience, one's closer to your house. The other important things you're going to consider is I like the salesperson, I don't like the salesperson. This one offers, service loaner cars, this one doesn't. You start making all those value judgments. At the end of the day, you're going to get the same darn product no matter which place you buy it from. Why are you going to buy it from one place over another? That's the way you have to approach the sale of key cards, gift cards, loyalty cards, event cards, anything. Why should they buy it from you? And if all you're focused on is the product itself, you're missing the point. Because you already know they can get that product one of how many different places? There are a lot of companies out there selling key cards, guys. Okay? Yeah, oh yeah. And very few of them are actual manufacturers, but that doesn't matter. Again, cutting through the noise. Everyone out there is saying we're this and we're that. As a consumer, how do you know what's truth and what's, fiction, right? How do you know? Okay, we in the gift card space in particular, we come across a multitude of suppliers and competitors who claim to be manufacturers, who claim to be printers. Meanwhile, they're working out of their house. You're not printing anything out of your house. I'm sorry. Okay, certainly not with a big offset printer. You don't have Komoris and you don't have these K6s sitting in your basement. Sorry. Okay, it's not happening. But yet they're telling customers, and their website even says we are the direct manufacturer. No, they're not. So again, as a consumer, how do you cut through that? You have to take a leap of faith at some point and say, I like this guy, I trust this guy or gal, and that's why you've got to be selling yourself first and foremost, not the product. The thing about selling a product, and the reason why most salespeople fall back on it, is because it's simply easier to do. It's a tangible item, right? If I need a marker, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can write with it, right? I can try it out, I can see if I like it, if I don't like it. A lot of times people make purchasing decisions that are almost emotional decisions, right? Everybody has their thing. Like, I'm an electronic gadget guy. New thing comes out, I got to go get it. Okay, some girls' shoes, handbags, whatever it is, You know, we all have those emotional attachments to certain products. It's not a logical decision at that point. It's I want it, I got to have it. Okay? That's product selling and that's product purchasing. Services, completely different. Services, people tend to approach much more analytically. Do I really need it? Is it really going to benefit me? You know, do I really need to spend the money? Because it's an intangible thing. Think about insurance. How many people like spending money on insurance? Nobody. Even if it gives you any kind of peace of mind, you're like, man, that's wasted money. Because it's something you buy and you hope you never have to use. Right? Like life insurance, that's the stupidest purchase, right? Because the only people that are going to benefit, you're going to be gone. Okay, but yet we do it. Because we understand the value of the service that we're being provided and the benefit to other people and even ourselves. Okay? Selling the service, though, is a much harder thing because it's an intangible. Now, here's the thing. Again, we talked about in the first section how salespeople are right-brained, artsy, like to paint pictures with their words, tell stories and all this kind of stuff. You have to use that skill when you're selling a service because you got to get your customer, your prospect to see the picture. Does that make sense? You've got to get them to see, look, this is how this is going to benefit you. And let me tell you a story. Let me paint you a picture. You know, let me tell you about one customer that I helped last week who did. You see what I mean? That's how you paint a picture where you show somebody this is going to add value. This is going to help you. This is going to improve your business. This is going to make you look good. This is going to make you feel good. That's how people sell services effectively. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. All right. Let's talk about everyone's favorite subject, cold calling. Why are salespeople hesitant, afraid, or hate cold calls? What is it that salespeople don't like about it? Salespeople. You don't want to get yelled at? Who said that? You? Okay. What was that, Brian?
I said there are a lot of reasons.
Well, give me a couple of good ones. What?
It's hard to begin with.
Okay, so it's hard.
You know,
What else? Rejection. Good, honest answer. What else? I heard yelling at. That's probably, I would say that's probably rejection. Usually if you're being yelled at, you're being rejected. Huh? Just the challenge of getting the person on the phone? Okay. Okay. I expect all those answers. And I'm not here to tell you they're wrong answers, because really in this respect there is no wrong answer. You're entitled to feel how you feel. I don't want you feeling this way by the time you leave this room. Okay? Yes, cold calls are a necessary evil. Let's call them that, although I even hate to characterize them that way because there's nothing evil about them. All right? But it's just something we simply need to do. It is a means to an end, right? We cannot convert a lead to a prospect, to a customer, to a client, if we are not cold calling. Now, it'd be wonderful if we could somehow always get handed absolutely hot, even warm. These are completely qualified. All you got to do is go in there and put the kill on them. Leads, right? As salespeople, we would love that. You know, just go in, do our thing, in, out. Here you go, sales admin, process this order. On the next. You know, but it doesn't always work that way. You've got to prospect. You have got to generate these leads. You've got to do a lot of other things. The only way it happens is through cold calling. The number one reason why most people don't do it, and I appreciated that honest answer, was their fear of rejection. Here's the reality. We talked about this in the metrics already yesterday. 7 out of 10 times, you're going to hear the word no. If that bothers you, I'm going to suggest you need to find another career path, because that is never going to change. Everybody hear that? And I'm not here to tell you to quit, okay? That's not my point. My point is, if that genuinely and sincerely makes you afraid and is why you don't pick up the phone, then I would honestly suggest you, one, get over that fear, or more than likely find another job. Because you have to get over that and you have to get on the phone. And once you embrace this reality, 7 out of 10 times. Think about that. In our private lives, you would never on purpose go into a situation that you knew 70% of the time you were going to get rejected. Right? Think about that. That's crazy, right? We must be nuts. Why do we do this? But we need to do it because it's the only way that's going to get us the customer and the client. Okay? So I recognize, I acknowledge, right? I'm using my own tool, okay? This fear, but it's one that you need to overcome Sales managers have been telling people forever, don't be afraid of the phone. The phone is your friend, right? You've heard all that stuff, right? Smile and dial, people, right? You know, you've heard all that stuff, okay? You know, smile and wave, boys. Everybody see Madagascar? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, all right. So, but you've got to be able to. Yes, it's hard, but hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for you by the time we finish here today. We already talked about the rejection. It's never okay for people to be yelling at you, by the way, okay, ever, all right? But we'll talk about how we can maybe help you avoid being yelled at. And we're definitely going to talk about getting people on the phone, because that, I certainly understand, is not anyone's fault. It is, as we talked about in the first section, it's a byproduct of email and voicemail, and you know, people are trying to do more with less staff, and it's just harder to get people on the phone. But there are some tried and true methods that I'm going to give you that are going to help you with that. So that one, I think, is going to be pretty easy. Like I said, what I want you to feel after all this is that it's not quite as hard as maybe you thought it was. I'm not going to lie to you. Cold calling isn't easy, okay? But it also doesn't have to be painful, and it doesn't have to be excruciating, and it doesn't really need to be that hard. And that's what hopefully we can help you with right now. Okay. A couple things, and we're going to break this down into basically 6 steps. And the first one is research. We touched on a little bit in the first section how sales is a profession, okay? Professional people, by definition of being a professional, are supposed to be what? Prepared, knowledgeable. You're a profession. You're a professional, right? You go to a doctor, the doctor better know his stuff, right? If every time the doctor's like, hang on, oh, that's what that is. Now, it doesn't breed a whole lot of confidence, does it? Okay, they're supposed to have certain knowledge as a professional salesperson, as an expert in key cards and all things key related. Okay, that's what we should put on your cards, shouldn't we? That'd be pretty cool. Okay, you got to have some expertise and you have to have some knowledge. The easiest way to get knowledge is do a little bit of research. Now I'm going to put a big, huge, fat disclaimer on this section. I encourage you to do research on your accounts before you call your accounts. When should you do research? Thank you. Non-money time, non-hammer time, whatever other time, but let me warn you now, if your sales manager comes to you after you take this training class and says, you know, I got to talk to you, your phone time is way off, you're just simply not on the phone. And if your response is, well, I'm researching my accounts, not an acceptable answer. And a few people have already given sales management that answer. Okay? It is not an acceptable answer. Here's another big fat disclaimer. Research does not take hours. It doesn't take a half an hour or 20 minutes per account or per lead. Salespeople do something that I affectionately call monitor staring. They pull up a website, they lean back in their chair a little bit, and they're zipping their mouths up and down, just staring at the screen. Okay? Great time killer. Makes you look busy, but you're really not being productive, are you? We talked yesterday about time management. We talked about how to make the most use of your time. Don't monitor stare. And Murphy's Law, your manager's going to walk right by you while you're doing it. Or worse, you're going to be on a website you shouldn't have been on in the first place anyway. Okay? But by far, the best tool we have for doing research is the web. Okay? You can find out pretty much every bit of information you need to know about a hotel or a Nashville, about a restaurant, simply by going to their website. How big are they? How many locations do they have? How many rooms do they have in the case of a hotel? You know, if it's an event planner, you can go to the event planner's website. They typically list the different types of events. Not always. Okay? You can get a good basis of information from the website. Sometimes you can even get executive names, you know, where you can go start right at the top and try and find out who do you need to talk to at that hotel or at that marketing company or at that event planner. A lot of useful information. It should not take you any more than a minute or two to quickly browse their website to pick up some very useful information, okay? If it's a really in-depth website, there's a ton of information on it, maybe it takes you a few minutes extra, but a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes tops, not 10, not 20. I see people shaking their heads, and I already know what you're going to say.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
What do you think is a reasonable amount of time? And for us, it really is 5 to 10 minutes.
No.
Just,
Are you talking about the internet itself?
I'm talking about events.
Now, she's shaking her head because the internet's slower on the...
I know about as far as time management
Right.
goes, to me, I mean, oh my goodness, they would be so much more effective
Yeah, you guys are on win terms, right?
I have no idea. what
Yeah,
we're
you're on
talking
win
about,
terms.
just candidly,
That's
but-
why. Yeah, that's what it is.
But I mean, sometimes when it can roll out,
It-
you know.
Takes a while to paint the page for you. It like draws down from the top
Yeah,
down.
we're
Yeah,
talking
you guys are
about
on win
a long
terms.
time. I give up
It's
on
not
it a
like
lot.
dollar for anything.
Right.
It's not even
But
that.
it does, like you said, it draws, it like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
because of the win terms. But okay, and that's a fair point. No, and that's a
Think
fair
about
point.
it,
I mean,
yeah.
so let's add a couple of minutes. And I understand this came up in the last training we did about events where, you know, sometimes those websites are really in depth and you got to dig and you got to look and you got to search and you got to find and
Then you have to go back to me and make sure nobody else is,
Right, I
stepping
mean-
on anybody's toes.
understood. You know, there are times when, again, we're talking about averages. There are always exceptions to rules. Generally speaking, it should not take you any more than 3 to 5 minutes. In the case of events, if it takes you 5 to 10, okay, it takes you 5 to 10. But what I'm saying is make good use of that time. Don't, while you should be on the phone banging away making those cold calls, use research as an excuse not to pick up the phone. That's what I'm trying to say. If the company's asking you for 3 or 4 hours on the phone, that still leaves you 3 or 4 hours a day to be doing a lot of other things. Some of the admin stuff you do need to do, the follow-up stuff that you need to do, the research that you need to do. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Don't use that, again, as a crutch or as an excuse to not pick up the phone. And salespeople do it all the time. Oh, I spent the whole day researching. Why on earth did you do that? That wasn't a good use of time. Well, yeah, but tomorrow I'm just going to hit it. I'm going to hit all those companies. And you don't. And the sales manager goes, all right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And they're watching your phone time like a hawk the next day, and it doesn't go up any. You know, you don't all of a sudden do 3 times the amount of phone time because you spent the whole day before doing research. Okay? So, you know, don't kid yourself and don't kid your management. That's not what's going on. A lot of salespeople use this as an excuse not to do other things. But it's an important thing to do. I definitely request you do it. I recommend that you do it. It will make a difference. Remember yesterday we were talking about the rule of yeses? Getting your customer to give you at least 5 yeses in the course of a conversation. And we talked about how, well, someone suggested both men and women are great at this, but my experience tells me women are always better at this, is to ask questions they already know the answer to. Okay? The best way to ask the question you already know the answer to is know the answers to some questions. And how are you going to know that if you haven't done your homework? Okay? And I'll give you a perfect example real quick to jump ahead just to give you a preview of what we're talking about. I do my research. I go to a hotel's website. I find out they have 500 rooms. Instead of getting on the phone and asking the front manager or the front desk manager or the hotel manager, how many rooms do you have? Instead, I say, well, I did a little bit of homework and I did a little bit of research on your hotel and I understand that you have 500 rooms. Is that correct? Yes. There's your first yes. Think about this for a second. How annoyed would you be, and I'll use my example. Did I use this? Did we talk about the pool yesterday? Where the guy called me with the verbal diarrhea just rambling off? Okay. Tell you a really quick story of what exactly I'm talking about. I got a phone call. This is a true story. I got a phone call at my house. And the guy introduced himself and said, hi, I'm so-and-so from John's Pool Maintenance. And we're running a real summer special right now. You know, we do this. And boom, VD like you wouldn't believe. The guy didn't even breathe. Okay, just on and on. We'll do this and we'll do that and we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And I let him go because I have fun with these people. Okay, and I let him go. And he went and he went and he went and he went. I'm not kidding you. It was 5, 6, 7 minutes. And I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. He finally goes, takes a deep breath. And I said, John, you done? He's like, yeah. He goes, so how does it sound? And he's already presumptively closing me. So is Tuesday or Thursday better for you? And I'm like, neither. And he's like, but why? It's such a great deal. I said, John, you forgot to do one thing. He's like, well, what'd I forget? You never asked me if I had a pool. And I don't. So thank you, goodbye. And I hung up on him. Okay? That's what 90% of the salespeople out there do. He assumed a lot. He presumed a lot, and he was way wrong. That phone call should have gone, hi, this is John from maintenance. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you have a pool? No. Thank you. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Goodbye. That's it. Cold calling is fine. I'm not offended by being cold called. I do it too. But ask me the right qualifying questions up front so we make sure we're not wasting each other's time. Okay? If he had done a little research, you can Google someone's home address, as scary as that is. Okay? And you can even look at their house from the satellite photos on Google Map. As scary as that is. Okay? He could have known without even picking up the phone and calling me that I don't have a pool. You see my point? A little bit of research. Your time is also valuable. The minute or two he could have spent doing that is the 7 minutes he could have saved me and him that I'll never get back in my life talking about a service I didn't even need. Everyone understand? Right? That's why, one, verbal diarrhea is so dangerous, and two, that's how powerful some research can be. Don't you, if you're calling, and somebody brought up yesterday about how, people have less staff, they're more crunched for time and all of that, don't you think you're doing your customer or prospective customer a service by not wasting their time? And don't you think by asking questions that you could have easily gotten the answers to off the internet or somewhere else is a waste of their time, or by already knowing the answers isn't a waste of their time, right? And if you're a GM and you're busy and you're running a hotel and you got some knucklehead salesperson on the phone going, how many rooms do you have, and do you do this and do you do that, I'd be on the line going, buddy, go to my website, call me back when you know what you're talking about. Click. I'm not kidding. That's exactly what I would do. And I get those sales calls at work all the time, and that's exactly what I do. I said, I had a call the other day, and the guy offered me printing services for plastic cards. I'm like, did you look at our website? We are a plastic card printer. Oh, sorry, my bad. But guys, this is exactly, so these are the Monkey 32s out there. These are the smile and dial guys, right? Sales manager gave Melissa, call all these companies. Okay. And away they go. Call, call, call. No, no, no. Cold calling sucks, right? Because they're not getting anywhere, and they're not getting 7 out of 10 no's. They're getting 10 out of 10 no's, and that's painful, right? That hurts. And now all of a sudden, you don't only not like cold calling, you hate cold calling because you're not getting anywhere. Does that make sense? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Is that what some of you have been experiencing? Okay, so let's change that up, and the first step is do a little homework. Another real great way to do research, and this is the one that I recommend even above and beyond the web, is utilize other departments and other people within that customer. I'll give you a perfect example. Your salespeople. Who do you think your best source of information might be at that company?
Purchasing agent or something?
Negative.
Another salesperson?
Thank you. Okay. Salespeople, hey, there's a bit of a brotherhood and a sisterhood here in sales, right? Honor among thieves, whatever it is, okay? But we tend to like to help each other out. I do. Another salesperson calls me and says, hey, look, salesperson, I need some help here. I'm trying to work with your company. I'm trying to this, I'm trying to that. Can you give me any insight? Can you tell me who I need to speak to? I'm much more receptive to that call than somebody who's just cold calling me, launching into VD. All right? Use that. Do not go straight to the front desk manager, the purchasing manager at that hotel. Do a little homework, do a little poking around. Talk to a front desk clerk. Say, who is your front desk manager? Who do I need to talk to? How is he or she? Is she easy to get a hold of? Is she hard to get a hold of? Better yet, can you transfer me? All right, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about avoiding voicemail and being able to get people on the phone. But going to other departments is huge. But you got to do it right. You've got to go to that salesperson and say kind of exactly what I was saying is that, hey, look, salesperson to salesperson, can you help me out? I was just assigned your account. We'd really love to see if there's a fit for us to do business together. If you could point me in the right direction, you'd really be helping me out a lot. One, people like to genuinely and generally help people. Right? Someone approaches you very nicely and sincerely says, hey, I could use your help. Are you just going to go, no, go away, I'm not helping you? No, more often than not, some of you might, okay, but more often than not, you're going to go, sure, what can I do? And if you can do it, and if you can accommodate the request, you're more likely to do it than not. Especially when you go to a fellow salesperson and say that, you're going to typically get a very good response. You'll get names, you'll get phone numbers, you'll get extensions. How many times have you called into a hotel or into a company, and unless you have a name, you can't even get anywhere? That happens. How are you going to get that name? Okay? This is what I'm saying, is go to another department. If you call and you get a receptionist or what we call our gatekeepers on the phone, and you ask for the purchasing manager, they immediately know what?
You don't know who the purchasing manager is.
And?
You're going to try to sell them something.
You're a salesperson. What do you think that receptionist or gatekeeper has been instructed to do by the purchasing manager?
Send them all to voicemail.
Filter, 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 filter. That's the term gatekeeping. This purchasing manager doesn't want to hear from 32 monkeys. He's sick of it. So he's like, hey, if you get that phone call, you put them straight to voicemail. Right? Or you take the information, or you tell them to send us their information, They'll show it to the purchasing manager. If we're interested, we'll contact you. How many times have you heard that? Okay, you know where that package goes? Right in the receptacle. Okay, is that effective selling? No, but yet as salespeople, somehow we feel a sense of accomplishment. I got a name. I'm sending out a sample pack. Sample pack out. Okay. You know how much those sample packs cost us, by any chance? A lot.
We would have the small brochures now.
Yeah, a lot. I know because I just got my invoice from Asheville for them. Okay, a lot. All right. We don't just send sample packs out unless it's a qualified opportunity, because we know more often than not they're going to wind up where? In the trash. You might as well take a few dollars and just crumple it up and throw it in your trash can at your cubicle, because that's in essence what you're doing. So that isn't effective and it isn't going to work. What you need to do instead is all the other stuff that we're going to be talking about here. Is everybody with me so far? Okay. Use other departments. I've called HR departments to get names. I've talked to receptionists. I've talked to all kinds of people. Get the information you need before you actually pick up the phone and call the decision maker that you're actually trying to talk to. All right? If you call in that same receptionist that's going to screen your call and not let you through to purchasing, if you call that same receptionist and say, "Can I speak to the sales department, please?" Is she going to say no? She's going to say, "Hold on, please." Bloop, transfer. Right? Because the sales manager has said, if you get any sales calls, you better make sure every one of those gets transferred to my salespeople. See the difference? You're going to get through to sales. Now you're going to get a warm body on the phone. Here's the amazing thing. I get a salesperson's voicemail. I leave him a message. I don't tell him why I'm leaving. I say, "Hey, this is Peter. I'm interested. If you can give me a call back." Sure enough, if that salesperson's doing their job, am I going to get a call back? Are you going to get a call back from that purchasing manager? See my point? Get the salesperson to call you back. Get the information you need. You know, do you do your purchasing there on property? Yes, we do. Who's the purchasing manager? What kind of guy is she? What kind of What kind of girl is she? Get some information. You know, salesperson, help me out. Right? You'll get a lot of information. You'll be amazed. You will come across some people that will say, "I can't give out that information. If I do, I'll get in trouble. I'll get fired." You know, yeah, you could call John, but don't tell John it was me that told you. You know, you'll get some of that. And if you get that, by the way, you better respect it, because you just burnt that bridge big time if you go throw Billy, the sales guy, under the bus. When you call John and said, "Yeah, Bill told me I could call you." Not good. Because then when you need to go back to Billy for more information, he's not there for you. Because either he did get fired or he's just not talking to you anymore. Okay? So don't do that. Okay? Obviously respect their wishes if they tell you, "Look, don't name me." The beautiful thing, though, and again, I'll say this again and we'll go more into this, is if you can say, "Could you do me a favor, Billy? Can you transfer me over to John?" Why is that powerful? Any ideas? Well, not only direct line, but why else? Thank you. Almost every company, almost every phone, almost every person has what on their phone? Caller ID. They see an outside number that they do not recognize. Are they picking it up? Probably not. Okay. An internal call, and this happened here. It was a funny story between Rob and Chloe. I don't know if you guys heard this story, but I called Rob, and we were talking to Rob Sargent, and I asked him to transfer me to Chloe. He did. It came across as Rob on her phone. She picked it up less than appropriately, joking with Rob, but it was me, and was mortified. Okay. Well, she was just being like, "What do you want?" or something like that, and she was just being funny about it and made some kind of a joke or a crack. And I laughed, and I said, "Chloe, it's Peter." And there was this dead silence. She was like, "Oh, my God." I bring that up not to make poor Chloe look bad. I bring it up because that's the powerful of an internal transfer. Guess what? People pick it up. "Hey, why is Billy from sales calling me? Hello?" "Oh, it's not Billy." "Oh, okay. Well, what can I do for you?" But now you got that person on the phone. You've got a live body on the phone instead of a voicemail. You see the difference? Okay. You're not always going to get that transfer from reception. And here's the thing. Most switchboards operate in such a way that if reception transfers you, your caller ID comes through. Did you know that? Have you seen that here? If your call comes through reception, the outside caller's caller ID comes through, because that's the way the system is set up, so you know who's calling you. Once the call's inside the system and it's picked up by Billy in sales, when it's then transferred again, the caller ID has been dropped already. All he's going to see is Billy's calling me. So these are little things that you learn over time that can really benefit you and get you through to actual people. Is everybody with me on that? Okay, so this is what I'm saying. No rocket science here, no reinventing the wheel, just simple practical stuff that will make it easier for you to get people on the phone, which was one of the main reasons you guys gave me earlier that you're afraid of cold calling or don't like to cold call because it's just so darn hard to get people on the phone. Do some of these simple things and it won't be quite as hard. All right, so everybody clear on research? The importance of doing homework, the importance of being prepared, the importance of being a true professional salesperson, it's huge. The second thing, and this is another area where I find people really struggle, is the introduction, meaning you introducing yourself to this lead and to this prospect. Now that you have, I hope, a better understanding of this company, right? You know at least some basic facts. You've done your research. You've done your homework. You know a little bit. You got a name. You got a decision maker. You got a phone number, an extension, or whatever. You know, you've got to prepare yourself now, and you got to actually pick up the phone and call that person. What is your goal when you call that person? Now, I'm going to say something that I don't want to confuse anyone. The problem I find that a lot of salespeople have when they cold call, their goal for that call is to what? No. Really? I hope not.
Some of them do. They're just
Well, that's an even worse goal. But when you, as a salesperson, when you call a customer, what is your ultimate goal? What are you trying to do? Sell them something, right? You're trying to close a deal. You're trying to sell. Here's the problem. We already established that 7 out of 10 times you're going to get told what? No. If you go into every single sales call expecting to close that customer, especially on the first call, how likely is that going to happen? No better than 7 out of 10 times, and very often even less than that. You with me? So like we talked about already, that's what starts to get people really discouraged with cold calling because you go into it with the wrong expectation. Your expectation for a cold call should be a little bit simpler. It should be to get information, should be to give information, should be to give information, okay? It should be to set a time or a place for another call or meeting. And then yes, guys, ultimately if we can somehow close or get business from this guy, especially in the first call, hallelujah. Okay, but it is not a realistic goal. And I don't want to confuse anybody. And sometimes when I do this training, some people walk away going, oh, phew, so if I don't close anybody, it's okay. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if every time you pick up the phone and make a cold call, that's what you expect, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to like cold calling even less. Does that make sense? Okay. Whereas if you set these goals and you say, look, I want to get more information out of this person, I want to give information, I want to at least set up a time or a place for either a meeting or another call, and I want to make sure that we're on the right track towards developing a business relationship. If you make those your goals, how likely it is that you're going to achieve those? Pretty high. See what I mean? So you can actually walk away from the call going, hey, I did what I wanted to do. I gave information, I got information, I set up a time where I'm going to call them to follow up tomorrow. You know, tomorrow's call, here's what my goal is, I'm going to try and do this. You see what I mean? And it becomes a way more positive experience for you than a negative one. We've already said in the beginning, we all hate rejection, although we shouldn't because we got to get used to it. But we still don't like it. I don't know anybody that likes it. Goes, yay, I got rejected, right? Nobody does that, but you kind of just learn to live with it, all right? But why make it, like I've said a couple times now, why make it any harder on yourselves? Okay? Go into the call with realistic goals. So, if you go into a call with these more realistic goals, like I've said, you're more likely to achieve them. It's going to be a more positive experience, not only for you, but guess what? For the lead and for the prospect. Okay, so that's why we want to approach it in that way. You've all heard the term, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. This is another reason why a lot of people are afraid of cold calls. Because they're afraid they're going to mess up, they're going to fumble their words, they're not going to say the right thing, and then what do I do then? Right? And it's a real fear that a lot of people have. Well, I'm going to try and make this a little bit simpler on you, and I'm going to give you exactly what I recommend you say. Here's the first thing. I live in Nashville now, so I use this joke even more often than I used to. Have you all heard the joke about a country song? If you play a country song backwards, what happens?
Everybody gets back together.
You get your dog back, your truck starts working, your wife comes back, right? You know, all these things, because all the songs are about losing your wife, losing your thing, your dog dies, right? Here's the problem that people get themselves into, or trouble they get themselves into when it comes to cold calling. If you start a conversation with, hey, how you doing? How's the weather over there? Did I catch you at a good time? What answers are you likely to get?
Positive.
You are? No. You're going to get nothing but negative. You're going to get, no, you didn't catch me at a good time. No, my wife just left me this morning. Thank you very much. And I really don't want to talk to you about key cards. Okay? How many times do you get an affirmative answer with like, yeah, I'm great. You know, I've been sitting here all morning waiting for you to call. I'm so glad you did. How many times do you get that response? Not very often. Okay, what you typically get is, well, no, I'm running to a meeting. You kind of caught me at a bad time. You know, can you try me back later? And you go, sure, I understand, no problem. You know, what time? I'll try you back at about 1 o'clock. How's that? Sounds good, sounds good, sounds good. You call back at 1 o'clock. He sees your number on caller ID. What do you get now? Voicemail. Okay? Do yourself a favor. Do me a favor. Don't ask, how are you doing? Don't ask, how's the weather? Don't ask, did I catch you at a good time? Don't ask any of those questions, because you know why? You're not going to like the answer. Now, old sales training used to teach people that you have to qualify a person's time. That's nonsense. All right? You already know, like I said earlier, they're not sitting around waiting for your call. Your call, no matter when you make it, is a distraction and a disruption to what they were doing at that particular moment. Even if they were playing solitaire on their computer, you're interrupting them. You with me? So they're not going to give you the warm and fuzzies of, yay, I'm so glad you called. Thank you. I've been waiting here all day. It's just simply not going to happen. So why even acknowledge that? That's a negative thing. You're not going to acknowledge that. You're going to get no. You're going to get, I don't want to talk to you right now. You're going to get, send me your information. I'll look at it when I get a chance. I'm real busy. You'll get a lot of those kinds of responses. So I avoid all of that altogether. Okay, don't do it. What you need to do instead is simply introduce yourself. And how I do it is I say, you know, depending on how the person answers the phone, like we talked about in terms of mirroring, right? If they answer the phone, hi, this is Bill, then I'm going to call him Bill. If he answers the phone, hi, this is Mr. Johnson, then guess what? I'm going to call him Mr. Johnson. Let's assume he answers the phone, Bill. I'm going to say, hi, Bill, it's Peter Krause with PLI. That's it. This freaks salespeople out. Okay? Because what you're going to do now, and you've heard it called different things, the pregnant pause, blah, blah, blah. It's just a pause. I don't know what's pregnant about it, but I don't know, people call it that. It's a pause. This scares salespeople because salespeople hate silence. It makes them very nervous. Okay, cricket, 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 cricket. Oh, man, that makes them, well, come on, somebody say something. Right? It freaks salespeople out. The reason I ask you to pause is because you need to train yourself to do it, because it is going to, at this juncture, help you avoid VD. Okay, it's going to simply help you. Because what you're going to want to do instinctively, because it's what you're all doing right now, is, hi, it's Peter from PLI, the world's largest key card manufacturer in the world. We've been in business for over 20 years, blah, 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 and here it comes. Okay? No. This is, hi, it's Peter from PLI. I stop. What does that force the other person to do?
Ask how you're doing.
It forces them to respond, and she's correct. More often than not, they ask you how you're doing.
And then it's positive.
And you say, oh, they'll go, oh, hey, Peter, how are you? What can I do for you today? Or something along those lines. Now, if someone asks how you're doing, of course you respond, and the polite thing to do is what? Say, I'm great. How about yourself? And do me another favor. I don't care if you're feeling like absolute you-know-what that day. Your answer better be positive. I'm great. Not, well, actually, I'm not feeling so great this morning, and my head hurts a little bit, and it's rainy outside. No, that's not good. And I've heard people do it. Okay, so don't do that. Your answer's always got to be, I am fantastic, I am amazing, I'm great, how about you? Right? We want this to be a positive conversation, not any way, shape, or form a negative conversation. There will be times, I will admit to you, that silence will seem forever. It's not. Okay, but in the beginning, when you're first doing this, it's going to feel that way. But force yourself to do it. They will respond. They will almost respond affirmatively, meaning positively, and it will get your conversation going off on the right foot. When the person says, oh, hey, Peter, how are you? What can I do for you today? Your response, please, 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 better not be, it's not what I can do for you, or you can do for me, it's what I can. None of that cheesy sales stuff, okay? It doesn't work. You're not selling used cars on a used car lot somewhere, okay? We don't do that kind of stuff. It doesn't work. It's cliche, and it's just cheesy as all get out, okay? So it's none of that stuff. When somebody says to me, well, what can I do for you? What I say, well, you know what, I'm really glad that I got you on the phone. The reason for my call today is I actually just wanted to ask you one question. Everybody get that? The reason for my call today was because I wanted to ask you one question. Why do you think I am saying that? Think about it real quickly. Why am I saying the reason for my call is to ask you one question?
Provoke curiosity.
That's part of it. What else?
Make them feel like you're not being sold.
Right. Am I selling yet? No. What else? In a way, I'm qualifying their time in a sense that I'm saying, look, I didn't call here to bore you with a pitch. I just got a question for you. Right? What's the harm in one question? You see what I mean? It's disarming. It helps them to relax a little bit. It puts their defenses down a little bit. Right? Never ever forget the I'm just looking impulse. It'll creep up on you in a hurry. The minute you flip your sales switch on, you're going to get it in one way or another. Well, yeah, you know, it sounds really good. I like what I'm hearing, but do me a favor. I'm really kind of busy. I got to run to a meeting. Send me your information. Boom, they just cut you off because you flipped the sales switch on. At some point in this conversation, trust me, we're going to get to not really selling, but we're going to certainly get to talking about why we feel they should buy from us, but not yet. Have we established like yet? No. Have we established trust yet? Definitely not. Why on earth would you start selling? Does that make sense? Okay. So I pause, I get the response, and I say, you know what? I'm glad I got you on the phone today. The reason for my call is I had just one question. I sometimes even say one simple question. Okay, and that question is, how familiar are you with PLI? Why do I ask how? How familiar versus are you familiar? What's the difference?
It elicits not a yes or no answer.
Right. Are you familiar is a closed end. It's a yes or no answer. Everybody with me on that? You don't want just a yes or a no. You want discussion. So when you say how familiar are you, that compels them to give you some more detail. You know, they could say something like, I have no idea who you are. I've never heard of you. Or, oh, yeah, I know you guys. I bought from you at my old hotel like a year ago. Yeah, I'm familiar with PLI. You're going to get a response like that versus a simple yes or a simple no. Does that make sense? Okay? So ask simply, how familiar are you with PLI? Are we selling yet? No. We're asking a very, very basic, logical, qualifying question. I do this also because I want to know, where am I starting from? Does this person know me at all? Are they familiar with the company at all? Have they ever bought from us? Have they ever heard of us? Or am I starting with a completely clean slate? Sometimes I almost prefer starting with a clean slate, but you never know. If I'm dealing with someone who has dealt with us before, that can either help me or hurt me. Now, we are a good company. We do offer great service and all of that, but let's say, for argument's sake, they had a bad experience with a salesperson or with an order or something didn't go quite right. It was supposed to show up on Tuesday. It showed up on Thursday. You know, to us, that's not maybe a big deal, but maybe to them it was a huge deal. They had a big group checking in on Wednesday. The cards didn't get there till Thursday. Okay, that's a big deal to them. If you just jump into it with all your enthusiasm about how great and wonderful and all these things that we are, meanwhile they're holding in the back of their mind the whole time, you're not as great as you think you are because you really messed up on that last order when I bought from you. Do you see how dangerous that is? Because then they're going to come back at you hard and say, well, you know, Brian, I understand what you're saying, but I got to tell you honestly, I bought from you guys about a year ago and you guys messed up. You were 2 days late on an order and it really messed me up. So you're talking to me about how great and wonderful your customer service is, but I ain't buying it. Now what? Now you're like, oh, crap. Right? And I'm telling you, it's happened to you. If it hasn't happened to you here, it's happened to you at one time in your career. That has happened. All right? So I want to know up front, what am I dealing with? Person like us, doesn't like us, knows us, doesn't know us. How well do they know us? Let's talk about the answers and the responses that you might get to those answers real quick, because this is another trap where a lot of salespeople jump in yet again to the verbal diarrhea. When the person says to you, oh, you know what, I've never heard of PLI, your immediate desire is to do what?
Send a sample pack.
No, I hope not. It's to blast out all, hey, we're the biggest, we're the best, we're the largest key card manufacturer, been in business for over 20 years, we keep millions of generics in stock, right? All that stuff you learn in training, here it comes. You just explode out on this person with all this information. That's selling, it's verbal diarrhea, and people tune you out. I'm telling you right now, they tune you out. It is not productive selling. What you've now done is you've immediately put their defenses and their guard up, and you're going to very quickly get, I'm just looking. Okay? So we do not do that. When somebody tells me that they're not familiar with the company, I will say something very simple, and I will say something to the effect of, wow, I'm really surprised you haven't heard of us. We are the largest key card manufacturer in the world. That's it. Okay? It's a true statement. To her point earlier, you're going to validate and you're going to verify that statement through everything else that you guys are going to talk about in the course of that conversation. If they challenge that statement, I love it. Let them challenge the statement because we can back it up. Do you guys know that we have over 75% of the key card market in the United States? Okay, you didn't know that? You should know that. Okay, we are clearly the key card market leader in North America. Now, the North American market is the largest market in the world. So no, we don't have a huge market share in Europe and Asia and some of those other markets right now. It doesn't matter. By having 75+% of the market here in North America, we are, by statistics, the largest key card manufacturer in the world. It is a factual statement. And we're careful with that statement. We do not say we are the largest plastic card manufacturer in the world, because that wouldn't be a true statement. There are companies that produce more cards than we do, not more key cards than we do. Arthur Blank, Terrico, Locke, Jet Litho, I can go on and on and on. Those are big card producing companies as well, but they don't produce more key cards than we do. Okay? So don't make the mistake of saying we're the largest card manufacturer in the world, because that's not true. We're one of, that's a true statement, we are one of the top 4 in the world in terms of card production. We are the #1 key card manufacturer. Okay? What I did, though, is I didn't launch into verbal diarrhea. I didn't hit him with this long pitch. I didn't just dump everything that I know about our company onto the guy. I made a very simple, what's called position statement. And I said, here's who we are. And I also said, wow, I'm kind of surprised you haven't heard of us. We're actually the largest key card manufacturer in the world. What did I do there? Why did I do that? Think back to the word inclusion. Everyone wants to hang with the cool kids. We're the largest key card manufacturer in the world. Why aren't you buying from us? Everybody else is, right? Jump in the pool. Water's fine. Come on in. Join the club. See what I mean? So very subtly, that's exactly what I'm saying is, hey, God, I can't believe you haven't heard of us. Where you been? Living under a rock? You can't say that. You want to say it, but you can't say it. Okay? We've been in business over 20 years, and we're the largest key card manufacturer in the world. If you're talking to a hotel that buys key cards, you know, as management, that's a little disheartening when they say they've never heard of us. You know, but it happens. You know, it happens. So again, we do not launch in the verbal diarrhea. We simply say, wow, I'm really surprised you haven't heard of us. We are the largest key card manufacturer in the world. And you stop right there. I'll take you to the next step in a moment. If they say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with PLI, what do you do?
Dig deeper, ask question, how?
That's good. How would you do that? What would you say? I mean, you said one already.
You ever done business with us, Peter, before?
I'd be a little softer about it, but that's the right idea. I mean, here's the thing. Don't ever take an answer at face value. It's very dangerous. Why might a lead or prospect tell you that they're familiar with the company when they're actually not? Thank you. Oh yeah, I know who you guys are, because they don't want to hear about you. They don't want to get the pitch. They don't want to hear the verbal diarrhea, so they lie to you and they tell you, oh yeah, I already heard about you. I know you guys. A ineffective salesperson lets that one go and breathes a sigh of relief and goes, whew, okay, most of my job's done. He already knows who PLI is. Right, wrong. Okay, you have got to qualify the statement by saying, that's fantastic. How do you know about us? Just ask the question. You don't even have to say, how, have you bought, just say, wow, that's awesome, or that's fantastic. How are you familiar with us? How do you know about us? And then listen to their answer. Well, I bought from you 6 months ago. I did this. Oh, I used to work at this property, this other Marriott, and we used to get all of our cards from you. Oh, that's great. Do yourself a favor. Ask them if it was a positive or a negative experience. Don't avoid the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Okay? Don't be afraid to ask the question. A lot of salespeople avoid the question because they're afraid they're not going to like the answer. Right? Well, what if he didn't have a good experience? And he's going to take it out on me, and he's going to tell me he doesn't like us, and I don't want to deal with that. Well, you need to deal with that if you have any hope and prayer of actually getting their business this time, right? So you've got to ask the question. You say, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that you're familiar with our company. Can I ask you an honest question? Was your last interaction with us a positive experience? Or you could say something like, I hope or I assume it was a positive experience. Be a little bit more presumptuous about it. And listen to what they tell you. Hopefully he says, oh yeah, no, you guys were great. Right? Now you can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief and go, whew, okay. At least he had a good experience. He's familiar with who we are. This call might go a little bit easier than some of my other calls. All right? And we'll still talk about the next steps that you need to take. But please, in both instances, regardless of the answer you get, do not launch into the verbal diarrhea at this point. It will stop the call cold. 2, if you get a positive affirmative answer that they're saying, yes, I am familiar with you, or PLI, you better qualify the answer and make sure they're not telling you a fib, just to avoid getting the sales pitch. If you do that, you will be in good shape. Okay? So again, let's run through that just real quickly. When I introduce myself, I call up and I say, hi, Bill, this is Peter with PLI. Pause. Oh, hey, Peter, how are you today? Bill, I'm fantastic. How are you? Oh, I'm doing okay, a little busy, a little crazy today. Completely understand that, Bill. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I called you for one simple question. Something along those lines. You don't have to use everything word for word. It's the delivery of it, and it's the message behind it, if you will. Nothing in what I just said was salesy. Nothing that I said was me selling at all. And nothing that I said up until this point, hopefully, put them on the defensive. Okay? One simple question, Bill. Oh, sure, Peter, what's that? How familiar are you with PLI? Oh, I think I've heard of you guys. You manufacture key cards, right? That's correct. How are you familiar with our company? Have you ever done business with us, or just simply like you said, or I said, how familiar are you, or why are you familiar? And listen to their answer. After you get through all of that, you have to now do what I call a transitional statement from you've introduced yourself, you guys both know who each other are right now. Now you actually have to start the job of qualifying the account. I want to make sure everyone understands what qualifying means or what qualifying is. Qualifying, in essence, is finding out as much information as you can about a particular company. As a salesperson, there are certain bits and pieces of information that you're going to need to gather to be able to effectively work with this client. Now, there are a lot of what I call kind of selfish questions that salespeople tend to ask, and those are intended to do what? To get straight to the sale. So you start off with, what lock system do you have? How many cards a year do you use? Who do you get them from currently? What was the last price that you paid? You start asking all these questions, trying to get right to the heart of the matter, right to the jugular, if you will, to try and get their business and close the deal. That doesn't work. You still haven't established like and trust at this juncture. Why on earth would they give you that information? Right? You can ask those questions, and actually I encourage you to ask those questions, but not yet. Not until you've actually qualified this person, because through qualifying the account, what you are doing is developing that rapport. You're hopefully developing that like, and you're hopefully getting closer to trust. Okay? So I don't ask key questions like that, like what do you pay, where do you buy them from, how many keys do you use, and so on, until I've developed some of that relationship, if you will. Does that make sense? I mean, because you can ask them whenever you want. I'm just telling you, if you do it this way, you're more likely to get the answers that you actually want, versus maybe getting an answer to one or two and then getting some harsh no's to a couple of the other ones. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you who I buy from. I'm not going to tell you how much I pay. You'll meet up with some of that resistance sometimes, okay? With qualifying it means different things to different people. So I want to make sure you're clear on what it, like I said, means to me. And that is, find out all the pertinent information you need to know about this customer to help you help them. Everybody seen Jerry Maguire? Help me help you? Okay, that's what this is all about, to take a real consultative approach where you are looking at ways in which, okay, how can I help you? And the only way I can help you is if you give me information that allows me to help you. Okay, again, this is a service sell, not a product sell. Everybody with me? You go in and meet with your insurance agent, what does that insurance agent start doing immediately? Nobody? Asking you questions, right? Qualifying you. Right? If it's your car, okay, what year is the car? How long have you been driving? Let me have your driver's license. Let me run your record, right? You know, they have to qualify you and see what do you qualify for? What category do you fit in? What products and services do you need? Do you need this insurance? Do you not need that insurance? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Do you own a home? Do you rent a home? Right? They're going to ask you all these qualifying questions. Why? Because with the answers to those questions, they now know what products and services to offer you. Right? Isn't that the way you should be approaching selling what we sell? But is it the way you mostly approach selling what we sell? Not always. Sometimes never. Okay? So it's really important that you qualify. What you're trying to do is you want to get the information, and specifically you want to get what I call the hot button issues. Hot buttons. What is most important to this particular customer? Different things are important to different people. When you launch into verbal diarrhea and you just hit people with those long-winded sales pitches, you're hitting them with everything and the kitchen sink sometimes. And what you're doing is you're casting a very wide net, hoping what?
To catch them.
That something that you said is going to catch their attention. Right? You're just taking like literally like a machine gun approach. I'm going to hit his, hopefully something hits. Right? That's a real silly use of time, both yours and theirs. Instead, find out what is really important to them and focus specifically on that. The only way you're going to find it out is if you ask probing, qualifying questions. So again, at this juncture, instead of selling, what you should be doing is you should be investigating. You should be researching. You should be digging deeper. The way you start this process, and here's where the rule of yeses comes into play. Get some of the stuff off the board. What's the best way to get a conversation going in a positive direction? We've already talked about it. Ask questions you already know the answer to, right? How are we going to do that? Anybody have any ideas?
Ask them the yes question. The questions
For
you have
example?
answers to.
Just give me an example.
I understand that you have 500 rooms in your hotel. Is this correct?
There you go. Okay? So what I'm going to do is instead of me launching into a bunch of questions, like I said earlier, are self-serving for my own purposes, might and probably will put him on the defensive, or worse, might lead to a whole bunch of no's, I'm going to start off by asking questions that I know I'm going to get yeses to, because that's going to start the conversation going in the right direction. It establishes a few things. It establishes you as the professional that we're saying you are. I did my research, I did my homework, and I say those words. And I say, Bill, you know, before we go any further, I've done a bit of research and homework on your hotel, and I just want to basically clarify a couple things with you real quickly. Not can I just want to qualify a few things with you real quickly. The research that I did, based on the research I did, or something along those lines, you can say, you know, your hotel has 500 rooms, is that correct? Well, yes, it is. And by the way, we're planning an expansion next year. We're going to add 200 more rooms. Well, that's a tidbit you didn't know. And he offered it. You didn't even have to ask the question. Okay, here's the thing, everybody, and we said this, I think, yesterday. I hope we did. You want this to be conversational, not confrontational. Most salespeople, not on purpose even, make most of these interactions confrontational. You have something I want, you better give it up.
Or even interrogational.
Same thing, yeah, interrogational. It's like, okay, where were you on the night of the, you know, you got them under the spotlight and you're just pummeling this person with questions. That doesn't work. It's got to be conversational. I went to law school, and in law school we had this thing, and you had to basically chart conversations, and they used it for if you were going to become a prosecutor, where you've heard like a lead question and you've heard all that kind of stuff. You've heard on TV shows at least. Or I'm going to start a new line of questioning. Well, the line of questioning came from actual law school, where basically we had to chart out an entire line of questioning. And when we had to start, it was with our primary question. We would get an answer, and then a follow-up question, a follow-up question, a follow-up question, a follow-up question, until we exhausted that line of questioning. And then what do we do? Started a new line of questioning. Started with a new primary, and so on and so on and so on. Based on some of the questions that we could ask in a capacity as a prosecutor, what could we do? You ever heard it? We could lead the witness. Now, you're not supposed to do that in a court of law, but guess what? You absolutely can, and you absolutely should in a sales environment. You can lead the prospect down the path you want them to go down based on the questions that you ask. And we'll talk about it, but conceptually, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, you really can. We're talking here about the art of selling. To me, where artistry comes into play here is when you can control the conversation while this lead or prospect believes that they are actually controlling the conversation. That is when you know you are in the zone. You ever read Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal? Hate him or love him, it's a great book. Right? It really talks about the transactional piece and his love and his passion for the art of the deal. And he talks a lot about this kind of stuff, and that when you can just go through an entire conversation and that person feels like they hang up the phone and they go, oh man, I got him. And Trump would hang up the phone and go, oh man, I got them. Both parties walked away thinking like they got what they wanted. That's a beautiful thing. That's a win-win. You've heard win-win, right? That's exactly what that is. When one or both parties walk away going, oh man, I just got hammered on that, or that stinks, or that was unfair, how long-lasting of a relationship or a transaction is that going to be? Probably not very. Look, here's the reality. You can steamroll and bully your way into a sale. I've seen people do it. But does that ever establish a long-lasting relationship with that customer? Never. Ever, ever, ever. You got to think about this long term. You can win the battle, but lose the war. Have you ever heard that? Selling, absolutely the same thing. You might get that one order, but it might be the last order you ever see from that person. Are you in it for just one order? Are you in it for repeat orders? Are you trying to get this customer to be a client, or do you not care? I can tell you the company cares. We want to convert as many of those customers to clients as possible, because that's going to be reoccurring revenue for the company, reoccurring commissions for you guys. It's all good. Okay? It's important that you take that long-term approach and you do that. So bullying and steamrolling doesn't work. Okay? What does work is being consultative and qualifying in your probing. I start off asking as many yes questions as I can. Now, the rule of yeses says get at least 5. Doesn't mean you have to stop at 5. It doesn't mean when you get 5, you're like, okay, I'm done. All right, you hope to get as many yeses. What it states and what it means is that if you need to get at least a minimum of, and then statistically you increase your chance of actually closing that deal or getting that customer to take next steps with you. Now remember, going into this cold call, our goal was not to close the deal. Our goal was what? To get more information, give more information, maybe set up a meeting or another call for what are the next steps. And then, yeah, if I can get this guy to a business opportunity, great. What I'm going to tell you very honestly is that if you do all the stuff that we're talking about today effectively, you will get to a business opportunity without even asking for it. And that's fun. I have been literally stopped in the middle of meetings and told, I've heard enough, we need help with this, what can you do? Now, the mistake I never make, and I will suggest you never make, is what? What happens when you already get what you wanted? Shut up. No. You're in a meeting or on a call, and the person gives you what you wanted. What do a lot of salespeople keep doing? Talking.
Buying back the sale.
You get what you wanted. Shut up. Stop talking. You got it. I have literally been in meetings, physical meetings with people, and had to kick salespeople under the table to say, stop talking. He already said yes. Why are you still selling? It's done. Let's talk about next steps. Let's talk about how to, move on from here, and that's it. When you are presented with a business opportunity, you immediately stop qualifying the customer and you start qualifying what? You stop qualifying the customer and you start qualifying
The same.
the opportunity, right? You start qualifying the opportunity. My hope is that people have spent time with you already in your training as far as qualifying an opportunity. When somebody says to you, I need 100,000 key cards, there are questions that you need to ask, right? There's information you need to get. Well, for what system, and for this, and when do you need them, and how do they print, and do you already have artwork? Do you need us to do the art? Right? There's a lot of questions that you're supposed to ask. You stop this, and you start qualifying that. Okay? You leave this script alone, on to the next, which is, again, okay, let's make sure I understand exactly what you need, exactly what you want, because you've already gotten an opportunity out of them, which is fantastic. Now what you need to do is show them that you're not going to drop the ball. They're testing you. Customers are always, always testing you. I always feel that way. Even if they're not, I always jump into a situation assuming they are. Here's the reality. Is this a fact or not? You are only as good as your last deal. Right? You were only as good as that last order. You were only as good as that last shipment. How many times have you had a customer for a while and you've delivered box after box after box of key cards or event cards, and all it took was that one misstep and that one mistake, and your entire relationship is sideways? Forget the 100 other boxes you delivered on time, perfectly, exactly the way they were supposed to do. What do they hold on to? The one mistake. It's just the way it is. And guess what? Bad news spreads way faster than good news. He's not running around the hotel going, PLI is great, PLI is great. But when you messed up his check-in of that large group, or if you messed up that event, he's told everybody and their brother, hasn't he? And that's really hard to recover from. So we're spending a lot of time as management, and there are a lot of other meetings and trainings and things going on, talking about tightening some of that stuff up so those mistakes don't happen, okay? Because you are being tested. If this is your first order and job, sometimes they'll even give you a small one. I have a customer right now, they're called Value Tech. They're one of the largest service providers out there. They drive about 45 million cards a year worth of actual business, gift card business. They have a contract with another supplier. They like what they've heard. They like what they've seen. I've developed a really nice relationship with them, but they're testing me. 10,000 cards here, 20,000 cards here, 50,000 cards. You know, I'm not seeing the bread and butter stuff. That's going to the vendor that they've been working with for the last 6 years because they're testing me. One mistake, one misstep. I may not lose them entirely, but now I've got to recover, right? And I've got to regain their trust. Are they going to hand me a 10 million card order when I messed up a 10,000 card order? No. Right? So these are all the things you always have to be thinking of. Make sure, again, if you're given an opportunity, you stop and you qualify that opportunity. Okay. Just like the triple transaction, in terms of the way you're supposed to be selling, it's also the way you're supposed to be qualifying. And what I mean is this. You want to start asking questions first about who? The person you're talking to. What I like to do with my yes questions, and Brian gave me a good example, but an even better one to start the conversation off with, and it might seem redundant because you're kind of like, duh, I already know he's the purchasing manager, but say, you know, I was introduced to you as the purchasing manager. Is that correct? That's one, it's your first yes, and two, what do people love to do more than anything? Talk about themselves. Watch him go, yeah, not only am I the purchasing manager, but I'm in charge of this, and I'm in charge of that, and I got 10 people in my department, and yay, look at me, pound, 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 I'm king of the world. Give people that opportunity. Stroke their ego a little bit. Let them stroke their own ego a little bit. People love to talk about themselves. Okay? So, like the triple transaction, like I said, start qualifying the person. Why else are you doing that? What's the point? I want to make sure you guys got on camera, so I'm hanging out over here. Why else is that important?
Well, I mean, you could actually find out either one that they're not the right person, or that
True.
they have more potential than you initially thought.
True.
We're trying to develop a relationship.
Thank you. People buy from people. They don't buy from companies. They buy from people. We already know we're a good company with a lot to offer. Like I said yesterday, it doesn't mean anything if you're on the phone and they don't like you. Right? And if I have to get on the phone with everybody to get them to like us, then what do I need you for? Right? That's not the point. We need them to like you. We need them to want to be on the phone with you. You're their interface. You're their voice. You are their face of PLI. When you go to meet somebody, what do you talk about? Them, yourself. That's how you develop a relationship. And don't kid yourself, that's exactly what you're trying to develop here. I'm not talking about a personal relationship. You're not going to go out lunch and dinner with this guy all the time. You might, I don't know. But at least at this juncture, you're at least trying to develop a rapport and enough of a relationship to get to like and trust. Talk about them. If they mention something, and the other thing, real quick with research that I do a lot is, and this is just a tip, and I do this all the time, if I'm going to call a customer and they're in a particular city or town, I go to the internet real quickly and I pull up the local paper for that town. So I have current events and I have information in front of me. So I'm on the phone with them and now I just want to be conversational and talk with them. And I go, wow, I read about that flood that you guys had yesterday. He's like, how did you hear about that? I didn't, I'm like, well, because I was checking out your local paper. You were? But think about what that says about you as a salesperson. Look, I'm genuinely interested in you. I'm genuinely interested in your company. You're not just a name and a number on a piece of paper. I'm not just dialing for dollars. You see the difference? Okay, little tiny things, guys, make a difference. Talk about the local sporting event that happened there. If you know the guy or gal's a sports fan, talk about whatever. That's how you develop a rapport and a relationship. If your entire focus is on just finding out what they buy, what they pay, when are they going to need it next, how long do those key cards last them, you're not developing anything, but you're being monkey 32. Salesperson, salesperson, salesperson. And it's worth repeating. We all know people love to buy, but hate to be sold. Okay? So let's not sell. All right? Couple more things. So we talked about the rule of yeses already. Again, get them, use the yes questions. Does anybody need any more on that? I mean, do you get the idea behind the yes questions? So you have this list and you have this research that you've done prior to picking up the phone and calling them. You want to use that information. Ask 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. Now, the question I typically get is people go, okay, I've asked all my yes questions, now what? Where do I go from here? Well, where you go from there is, here's the thing. Remember we talked about, your line of questioning. Here's the other big mistake that I find people make, not just salespeople, people. They're not really engaged in the conversation. They're not really listening. They're hearing, but they're not necessarily listening. And there's a difference, right? Would you all agree there's a difference between hearing and listening?
Yeah.
I know I say that to my kids all the time. Okay? There is a big difference. If you are active listening, have you ever heard that term before? You are in the moment and you are listening. The problem that salespeople run into is that you're not active listening because you're doing what? You're multitasking, you're doing something else, you're emailing while you're talking or whatever else that you're doing. Or what typically happens is you're thinking 1, 2, 3 steps ahead in the process. So you're not really in the moment. You're not really listening to what the person's telling you. The problem with that, the danger with that, is that you're missing really good pieces of information. And you're missing pieces of information that are going to allow you to ask logical follow-up questions. When I listen to my salespeople's calls all the time, they sit right outside my office and I can listen to everything, okay? And when I hear it being really conversational, where it's just two people talking, I know it's a good call. I know it's an effective call. When a salesperson does an interrogation and pounds somebody with a bunch of questions and hangs up and goes, ooh, that was a good call, I'll chime in and go, no, it wasn't. Did you even come up for air? Did the customer get to say a word? That wasn't a good call. Everything you said was correct. Everything you said was completely accurate, but you didn't qualify. You didn't develop a relationship. You didn't develop rapport. You didn't do any of the stuff that we've talked about. And they're like, oh, yeah. And they go back and they try it again. Okay? Here's the other thing, too, and I want to say this real quickly. You've obviously already been talking to customers, right? You've already been speaking to them. You've been developing leads and prospects. You already have customers, and some of you even already have clients. What I'm going to suggest that you do is you go back and you revisit every single one of them and do this. The way you do it with someone that you've already been speaking to is to say exactly this. Look, I know that we've already had a few conversations, and you've actually even placed a few orders with us, and I really appreciate that. But you know what, to be really honest, I don't still feel like I know as much as I need to know about you and your business. Let me ask you a few questions. And then you start qualifying again. Because I promise you, you missed stuff. You might not be speaking to everybody in that hotel that you need to be speaking to. and ask that question. Look, is there anybody else in the hotel that I should be speaking to? Is there anybody else in the company that gets involved in other events or in other programs? You know, who else within the organization? Would you mind making a recommendation or a referral? You've got to go back and revisit all of those leads, prospects, and customers and do this.
Can you go back and use this on people that you sold the wrong way and it hit a no, I'm not interested, that's it?
Even more important. Absolutely. Everybody heard that question? He said, you know, can you go back and let's say you messed up or you sold the wrong way or you got a definitive no, not interested. How do you go back and revisit it? Absolutely, Brian. That's exactly what I want you to do is go back and take this tact instead. And you know what? Even acknowledge and say, look, you know, I think last time we spoke, we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to take another approach at this. Acknowledge it right up front because then you take ownership of it. You know he's thinking it. Oh, it's that Brian guy. What a jerk.
And you're tabling the objection.
Right. You've got it right out in the open. You know what? I think we really got off onto the wrong foot last time. I know that I feel that we did. You know, let's take another shot at this. Let's start all over. How familiar are you with PLI? And then just work it. And you will be amazed at the difference. You really, really will. I know you're probably looking and listening to some of this and you're like, well, this is pretty simple. Well, what's the big deal? The big deal is a lot of people don't do it. Most people don't do it. And if they do it, they don't do it consistently. Remember how we talked in the first section about consistency? And that's the thing that really drives me crazy as management is I'll listen to a salesperson do it and they get the result. And then what happens is they start to get a little cocky, they start to get a little comfortable. They're like, oh, I got this thing. And then they start taking shortcuts, they start cutting stuff out, they figure they can just do it their way, and all of a sudden the results aren't coming, and then they're like, oh man, maybe I should have done, okay, let me try this again. And then all of a sudden it starts to work again. And yet, again, they'll still slip back into old habits and old ways. Don't be that person. Don't let that happen to you. Every call, every time. Remember my friend Scott, the mortgage guy? Right? 100 calls a day, every call sounded the same. Boring as heck to listen to. I'll agree. Okay? But you're not the 100 different people that he's talking to on the phone. Even his fellow salespeople complain. They don't even want to sit next to Scott because they're hearing it's like a recording over and over and over again. You know, and that's silly on their part. Instead of going, man, that's a guy I could really learn from. I'm going to emulate what he's doing. They're annoyed by the repetition. Repetition, when you're doing it right, is a good thing. Repetition, when you're doing it wrong, we've already established is what? Insanity or stupidity. Okay, you don't want to be either. Okay, so when you find what works, you're supposed to do it. Go and do this and do it consistently. Right?
I just wanted to add something I noticed. It's
Sure.
hard when we're all, because I'm new like you, like Peter's saying, you know, well, how can I make it real with that person? One of the things we do at PLI is we call all parts of the country. I think one of the easier things for me to do is identify, there's, oh, Shauna, you live in Kentucky, you know, say something about their city or their state, whatever it is. That's something easy that can come up. You know, something about, I was calling San Diego yesterday for Brian, and I'm not going to talk to these people until September. I happen to live in San Diego. I wanted them to know that. That was important. I lived in a suburb of La Jolla, which is even better. But I was saying like, oh, gee, Peter, I'm not going to talk with you till September when the event is, and I'll be emailing you about the key cards. But until then, I really want to wish you a great summer. And this woman was like, oh, wow, you know, Ian's wishing me a great summer. It's like, I had great memories. I used to live in San Diego. Oh, you did? Yeah, I lived in La Jolla. Gee, I loved it. And even if we didn't live in it, but that's something that we can say, something personal about their city. That's just my 2 cents. Because, Peter, what everyone's thinking is, give us some things to ask about that person. That's the hardest thing.
Well, but that's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about, again, bringing up the local paper, you know, trying to find some common ground. I mean, but you have to ask questions and qualify and ask people straight. I mean, again, you get through your yes questions and ask them. You know, are you a sports fan? What are your other interests? You know, I guarantee you they haven't worked at that hotel their whole life. What did you do before that? Where did you work before? Did you have any other interests? You know, again, you're trying to develop some kind of a rapport/relationship with this person. The only way you do that is by asking questions.
But I think everyone's a little shy in the beginning to do that. Should we make that step in, you know, do we appear unprofessional? That's
No,
not the
and
right way.
yeah, and guys, I
know
said,
we all think that once in a while.
yeah, and I said this yesterday. I mean, jokingly, because everyone was being sarcastic. You guys are not shy, okay? But being shy and being a salesperson do not compute. You can't be a shy salesperson.
Well, hesitant in making that threshold of, oh, gee, Brian, what's your favorite football team? You know, being hesitant to make that transition.
But
Being
hesitant, I understand, but hesitancy is okay. Not doing it is not okay.
Right.
You can have a little bit of apprehension and be like, can I, okay, I will, but you still have to do it. And then once you find out that very valuable information, you use it. I mean, I've done really simple things, guys. I mean, like I found out this one really big customer of mine was a huge Yankees fan. Huge. Okay, now this is a big customer of mine. I mean, I did millions of dollars worth of business with this particular guy. I had another customer who did business in Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay was playing the Yankees, and they happened to have a box at the stadium in Tampa Bay. And I invited this guy down. I called him up and I said, hey, I want to invite you to this game. We've got box seats for this game, Tampa Bay versus the Yankees. Oh my God, he couldn't believe it. So that wasn't even where I stopped. I was able to get, because I had know some people, an autographed baseball from the Yankees to give to this guy. Now, do you think I owned that guy or not? I mean, I did. I mean, in terms of relationship.
Sure.
I'm not saying you can always do things to that extreme, but you can do little things. Little things. If you know.
Reading that local newspaper is a good idea.
Yeah, if you're talking to somebody in San Jose, California, they're a San Jose Sharks fan, a hockey fan, right? And you went to their local paper and you saw the Sharks played last night. Say, hey, Bill, did you see the Sharks game last night? Oh, my God, yeah, that was a great game. You don't have to know anything about hockey. It's okay. And that's what freaks people out. I don't know anything about hockey. I don't know anything about football. I don't know anything about baseball. I'm not going to ask those questions. It's going to look stupid. All you're asking them is, did you see the game? Did you watch it? Oh, yeah, I thought it was great. Okay? You see, and now you're developing a relationship or a rapport.